Welcome to our latest edition of our weekly deep dive featuring Hudson Institute. I'm Jonathan Hassan, and in today's edition, we're going to discuss, of course, the latest developments here in Israel, throughout the region and beyond, with chief focus on latest tensions between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the State of Israel. To deliberate that and much more, let's now turn to my colleague in Washington, D.C., probably, since I see that you're in a hotel room, senior fellow at Hudson and director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East. It's good to see you, Dr. Michael Duran.
Great to be here, Jonathan. I'm not in Washington, D.C. I'm in a secure, undisclosed location.
Well, we'll keep it at that then. If you may focus, of course, initially on the quite impressive, if I may add, preemptive attack against Hezbollah infrastructure capabilities in southern Lebanon and somewhat north of the Litani River as well. What are we to take out of it, and what is the current state of play?
This was, as you say, an extremely impressive display of power by the Israelis over the weekend. I will categorize it as a tactical and operational success, not a strategic success. I'll explain that in 2 seconds. But it is such an impressive tactical and operational success that it could possibly pave the way to a strategic success. So the Israelis, they shifted the balance of power, I think, between Iran and Hezbollah, who until now have had us all fearful because they have this overmatched capability, this offense-dominant regime where they're able to send rockets and missiles and drones at Israel, and Israel is unable to respond, both because of fear of escalation and also because of fear of what the United States will do. And the Israelis have they've shifted that. They carried out a preemptive strike and thereby neutralized the overmatched capabilities that the Iranians and Hezbollah have. But in doing that, it wasn't just that they showed a willingness and a capability to do this preemptive strike. They also showed phenomenal intelligence capabilities. It's not just that they knew in general where these rockets were and drones. It's that these were time-sensitive targets, so it shows an incredible penetration by the Israelis of the battlefield. It may show, and I'm not sure about this. I don't want to say it categorically, but my impression is that they also got a green light from the Americans to do this, and that shows a bit of a shift on the part of Washington in the direction of the Israelis, and we can see as a result of this that when Israel is untethered and isn't restrained the way Washington has been restraining it up till now, it becomes a great strategic asset in the hands of the Americans and improves their own diplomacy throughout the region. This is something that the White House hasn't understood. All in all, fantastic tactical and operational success. It doesn't change. It's not a strategic success in the sense that Iran and Hezbollah still have this overmatched capability. The north in Israel is still depopulated and insecure. And Hezbollah held in reserve, it seems, its precision-guided missiles. I think if I understood the press this morning, these were only rockets that Israel hit. Very, very impressive, very significant. But there's still an escalation capability that Hezbollah is holding in reserve. And so we have to see how Iran and Hezbollah are going to respond to this, and whether the Israelis will continue to preempt in this way and thereby gradually erode and shift the balance against Iran and Hezbollah.
Thank you, Dr. Duran. Let's now turn elsewhere around the globe to another colleague, an adjunct fellow at Hudson, formerly an acting Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, namely Mr. Ezra Cohen. It's good to see you, Ezra. I'd like to hear your perspective to that quite impressive capacity to unveil the Iranian planned to attack, namely at 5 o'clock in the morning, with a window of just several minutes before 100 aircraft launched in order to interdict that specific attack. What can you tell us from an intelligence perspective, since we heard also that the United States was actively also involved, not only granting Israel a green light?
This was one of the first actual real-world instances of launch on warning. This was obviously a concept that was developed during the Cold War. It was mainly in the nuclear weapons age. But what you saw here was Israel received warning of the attack. It seems like that was done in coordination with the United States, and it was able to very, very quickly mount a preemptive response. There aren't too many examples of that. This was textbook indications and warnings. And from an intelligence perspective, militaries love to spend money on big weapons platforms. This is probably the best argument for more spending and investment in intelligence. It takes a long time to be able to develop this sort of collection and access to be able to real time preempt a missile launch, not to mention many missile launches simultaneously. And so I think what happened there, just like the Yom Kippur War, was a great lesson. The history books will cover that as a great, many great military lessons there. History books will look back at this preemptive response as really an incredible textbook example of indications and warnings.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ezra. Let's now turn to Madrid, Spain, where we're joined by Dr. Rafael Barraji, formerly a Spanish national security advisor and currently the CEO of Worldwide Strategy. It's good to see you, Rafael. Could you provide us somewhat of a strategic outlook, as Dr. Duran mentioned, the fact that this was operational as well as a tactical achievement, but how can Israel capitalize on this for the strategic scope and land?
Well, being agreement basically with what Mike Duran said, I think it's important that the attack happened and took place, because that indicates to me at least a change on the mindset of the Israeli authorities. Israel has been on the defensive for so many years that going on to the preemption attack mindset is for me is strategic. But anyway, I agree that this specific attack is more operational than strategic. The government in Jerusalem has been trying the last 10 months to change the rules of the game south of the Litani River, basically. And I'm not sure that that will be enough. I mean, I think it's an important message to Nasrallah and Iran, but I think the government should think when Gaza is over, not only in changing the rules of the game, but in changing the game completely, because Hezbollah is still full of many capabilities and has so many weapons and assets at his disposal that is really a strategic threat against Israel still.
Thank you, Dr. Bardahi. Let's now turn to Major General in Reserve Gail Shona Cohen, formerly the commander of the IDF Northern Command, the General Staff Corps commander, as well as the commander of the defense colleges in Israel. It's good to see you, General.
Good to see you all, yes.
The pleasure is always ours. I'd like to take this opportunity to quote the Israeli defense minister who spoke following the preemption of Hezbollah's anticipated attack yesterday, during the course of which he stressed this action is significant because when the enemy counts the arsenal that was destroyed, his past intentions and what he managed to achieve, it will reach the same conclusion that we have reached, even if the enemy tries to hide and disguise its losses and explains the outcome. However, facts are facts. You know them. The screens tell their story, and your excellent work has brought about this outcome. We're talking here about not only this last attack in which the defense minister and various spokespersons of the IDF and defense establishment have noted some 6,000 munitions being degraded and eliminated during this preemption, alongside, of course, 11 months almost of attacks and degradation of Hezbollah's capabilities, something that, of course, has diminished its capabilities quite significantly, and in context with what Dr. Bardahi just mentioned about the strategic objectives and the necessity to capitalize on them. Is this now the time to act against this Iranian proxy in Lebanon?
For your last question, it is yes, but not immediately. And regarding the declaration of Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, what he emphasized is that the message is not less important than the action. And it is really important in the whole region what happened after in the messages of Nasrallah emphasize that really we are in a game of messages. Beyond that, of course, as was said here, it was a preemptive strike. Definitely it is true regarding the terminology. It was not a preemptive operation. And actually what was emphasized here is, first of all, the capability to take decision. Second, the accurate intelligence information. Third, the capability of Air Force performance. And the last achievement, very important, that it was, according to what I can guess, and it was said here and there, the American administration got the intelligence before and they gave a green light. Beyond that, what really happened, we must take the outcome as a learning from friction, in the same way that we are studying from reconnaissance unit. We are sending the reconnaissance not in order to achieve victory, but to create friction according to it, to learn more about the decision making of the enemy. It actually happened. It really repeated the awareness that Nasrallah not at all running to open an ultimate warfare.
And Dr. Duran, what message are we to take out of all of this, considering the fact that, as also General Cohen mentioned, and really each and every one of you has highlighted, it seems like the Iranians are concerned of prospects for wider escalation, are trying to make some tactical achievements to save face, but at the same time, they will not go on some adventurism for the sake of Hamas in Gaza or anyone else due to the power disparity between particularly the United States, especially when it's backing the State of Israel the way it did in this specific preemptive attack, and will also consider scaling back further. And this is, of course, speculative, but it may consider to scale back further if that is capitalized upon and this friction is further intensified.
Well, pardon me. I think you just stated it very well. If you think back where we were a couple of weeks ago, we were afraid, or I personally, if I think where I was afraid that there was going to be a combined Iranian Hezbollah attack that was going to lead to a significant escalation. And we all had pictures in our mind of the missiles and rockets that were going to be hitting Israel. But the Israelis flexed their muscles by killing the chief of staff of Hezbollah and Hania in Tehran, among others. And we saw the Iranians blink. Also, the Americans put a lot of forces in the region. And the Americans also, I think, green-lighted the attack on Hudaydah. And so the Iranians blinked. They decided to go for a more limited response from Hezbollah alone, and it failed. I mean, the Israelis then preempted it. I totally agree with what Raphael Bardahi said, that the new mindset there's a new mindset in Jerusalem, a preemptive mindset, and there seems to be something of a new mindset in Washington as well. But Jonathan, here's my concern. We can see that this friction is improving Israeli understanding and allowing the Israelis to get to a position where they have a little bit of advantage, which they're exploiting in order to shift the balance gradually against Hezbollah. But what the Americans want an end to the war, and I can guarantee you that Biden, Kamala Harris in Washington today, they're thinking, okay, now we can use the fear of the Iranians to put pressure on Hamas to get a ceasefire and to end the war completely. And when that ends, that means no more friction between Hezbollah and Israel. And it means that if the war ends today, which is what the Americans want to do, it means that the north of Israel is depopulated, and the citizens of Israel who have been evacuated from the north are going to be reluctant to go back to their homes because they will not feel that they are secure. I mean, a victory here, I don't think what we should look for is total victory of Israel over Hezbollah, wiping it out. But victory at this stage in the conflict with Iran means the people of the north, the Israelis of the north, go back to their homes with a sense of security. And that's what we should be looking for. That is not a goal that Washington has.
Mr. Cohen, when we're hearing the messages coming out of Washington, one of the main things that I take away from it is that they view, as also Mike mentioned correctly, the failure of Hezbollah as granting tailwind to the current negotiations in Cairo about potentially achieving Israeli concessions alongside a temporary cessation of hostilities that may be later doubled down on in one way or another in exchange for an undisclosed number of hostages. What is going through the minds of the American delegation currently in Cairo, pulling the strings, particularly Bill Burns, CIA director, and, of course, the White House Special Envoy, Brett McGurk?
Well, first of all, it's very hard to predict what's happening in another person's mind. And certainly after seeing how this team has behaved over the past almost year towards one of our closest allies, I think I'm going to stop predicting where they're going to go next. But what I will say is, and I agree with what Mike was saying, which is that they are looking for an out. And, my concern is they're going to go to Israel and they're going to say, look, we gave you the intelligence you needed to take this preemptive strike. That's enough they're also going to leak it in the American press that they did that for electoral reasons. And they're going to say, we'll be with you if something happens again, but it's time for you to wind the war down now. We did this very big favor for you. Now you need to bring Gaza to a conclusion immediately and accept the deal. Instead of looking at this as, okay, we now have positive momentum to deal with what is a persistent threat, not just for Israel, but it's also become a persistent threat for the United States. In our own hemisphere, Iran is a threat to the U.S. in the Western Hemisphere. But I don't think they're going to go that direction. They're going to say, let's bring this to an end really quick.
Dr. Barrahi, I'd like to hear your point on this, but also beyond this, we're hearing that the Egyptians continue to reject any viable deployment of Israeli troops or maintaining the security corridor of Philadelphia and the Rafah border crossing. Will this be a no-go from Israel's perspective? And if so, how can Israel mitigate such a security concern that may, if it does relinquish potentially the Philadelphia corridor, may bring about not only the rearmament of the Islamist Hamas in the Gaza Strip, it will not only, with reports of thousands of jihadists looking to get into Gaza to join Hamas in fighting Israel, and by doing so rebolster this designated terror group once again, but it will also potentially allow Hamas to smuggle out hostages and potentially deliver them to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Well, Jonathan, I visited the Philadelphia corridor a few weeks ago. I saw the efforts of the engineers to locate and destroy the many tunnels that they have located through intelligence and sensors and everything, but they also have a tough call in for the future. No, what they asked me was, tell to the politician to give us the time to complete our mission. Our mission may take a few months. Having said that, some of the generals in the IDF believe, I was told at least, that they can leave the Philadelphia corridor as far as they can re-enter when they need it. But sincerely, beyond the capability to go back again and again, I think staying in the Philadelphia corridor also offers something political and strategically against Hamas. Hamas, if the Israelis go back to Israel and leave the Philadelphia corridor for them, they will claim victory. And I think, we are now on the verge of strangling, really, Hamas leadership and Hamas capabilities. Don't give them back a blank check, just because the Americans and the Egyptians and the international community is asking Israel to wind down the war. No? I think, yes, the hostilities can go down to a minimum level, but the control of the Philadelphia corridors and other corridors in Gaza are a strategic asset for Israel, and that cannot be given freely back to Hamas.
Absolutely. Just to put this on the table, I did my due diligence and I spoke with a long list of generals and colonels who are top in their field when it comes to border security, including in Israel, including in Europe and elsewhere. They all have said that there is no viable option to relinquish the Philadelphia corridor and do the whole over-the-horizon quote-unquote protection. It's just not viable. I'm sure General Cohen also thinks in the same manner, and therefore I'd like to ask you, General Cohen, if we may divert to another point, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, remain adamant on attacking Israel in one way or another. What are the preparations being done in order to confront this threat, and should Israel go on the preemption also against them?
Actually, the whole trends led by the American leaders are against what you now just described. What actually they want and demanding that from Israel is a relaxation, that what happened in Gaza will come to an equilibrium of relaxation. Actually, next step will be the same ceasefire in Lebanon, and then all the region will calm down. Actually, it is just to delay the whole problem and to ignore the potential of a regional war. And speaking about the corridor of Philadelphia, it is also necessary not just regarding the smuggling, it is also important as a message to the Egyptians that the Israelis can really demand against the Egyptians' will what is necessary for the Israeli security consideration. What really will happen, we don't know.
Indeed. Well, we're drawing near to the end of the program. We have 3 minutes, and therefore each one has 1.5 sentences at best. Dr. Duran, where are we heading from here? What do you expect there to evolve out of the current state of play?
What's going to evolve is this is tension between Jerusalem and Washington over the ultimate war aims. And I agree with what General Cohen just said. It's important to show to the Egyptians that that Israel is going to follow its security dictates, but it's also important to show Washington that. It's also good for Washington that Israel does that, but that's another question.
Indeed. Mr. Cohen?
I think the big key here is what is Iran perceiving? They now know very clearly Israel has the ability to spot threats early. They have the ability to generate force, a massive amount of force very quickly, and they're able to do it at distances.
Dr. Bardaki?
Well, despite the operational and tactical achievements of the last day, I think we should avoid becoming self-complacent. We know that the enemy is able to surprise us in a strategic way. So don't forget that Iran is still there, and the goal to wipe out Israel from the map of the earth is still with the Ayatollahs, and that's something that should be concerning for everyone.
General Cohen?
The main riddle is how come that in an era in which in the region and in the whole globe, we are really facing a huge disorder, and the Americans are yet trying to create here an order. It's absolutely impossible.
Indeed. I think that within that context, it's very important to take into account the fact that the Islamic Republic of Iran is closely monitoring the reactions of the United States in the region, but not only Iran, but also its masters in Beijing, its partners in Moscow. This is the age of strategic power competition. The last time Ezra was here, he spoke quite articulately about the March 27th meeting in Alaska between Wang Yi and Antony Blinken. And therefore, if the Chinese identify the weaknesses, particularly also projected in the Red Sea with the Ansar Allah capable of abruptly frustrating freedom of navigation in Bab el-Mandeb, what will this spell to the straits adjacent to the South China Sea and elsewhere? But this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Cohen, Dr. Bardahi, Mr. Cohen, and Dr. Duran for all of your insights, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition of Deep Dive featuring Hudson Institute, from me in Jerusalem, wishing you a good day. The Middle East, home to the cradle of civilization, retains a reputation from time immemorial as one of the most complex, conflict-ridden regions of the world. A cluster of nations, religions, powers, and influences, Mideast intricacies pose conundrums to even the most astute individuals. Bombarded daily, indeed every minute, by a barrage of information, some accurate, yet most of it less so, TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio every Tuesdays and Fridays for content that truly matters.